Mark, obviously you and I, just to kind of introduce you and talk a little bit about you and I, we kind of go way back, played against each other in the independent league. Um, we're kind of on rival teams a long time ago, right? When we were in high school. So that was kind of fun. Not playing against each other necessarily in high school, but in the summer. So it's been fun, man. It's been a fun ride. You and I have obviously talked about this, to launch and stuff like that. It's just kind of wild where we grew up kind of 20 miles apart, played against each other, knew each other, and ended up both working in the big leagues and stuff. Pretty cool. Pretty cool to be doing that with someone that I've known for a long time. And a lot of people don't know this, and I'll share this, but it's kind of funny, Mark. And I think you'll be fine with me sharing this. But you were the first. So my company, Elite Sports Advising that I owned, you were the first guy that I tried to hire, actually. So we even go way back to that, so so I've long admired you. I think we really click as friends and stuff and share a lot of the same values. So you were kind of the perfect guy for me to have on this. I feel like discussing character and what that means as we're building character. And really, we're going to talk a lot about baseball, but really just in general, what we're trying to do
Mhm.
with youth and high school players, even college, right? What college coaches are trying to do and build that character and stuff. And obviously you're trying to do it. I mean, you're trying to do it as a coach in the big leagues. I mean, that's something that still matters. It always matters, right? And so we'll get into that, but I just want you to start, man, by sharing kind of your background. I mean, you have a very unique background and upbringing, where you're from, that whole story is really cool. I just want you to share, if you would, kind of the background and how you got to this point in your career, man. It's a really cool path.
Yeah, so if I skip over something too quickly or
Yeah.
please remind me, but I'll try to make it short and condensed as possible. So I'm originally from Balsam Lake, Wisconsin, a small town in northwest Wisconsin of about 1,000 people. Um, my parents were international school teachers, so I was actually born in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And I grew up most of my life as a third culture kid. And between Saudi Arabia and Islamabad, Pakistan, and then come back in the summertime to Northwest Wisconsin. I was in ninth grade playing softball at the American Embassy in Pakistan when a Marine actually said, "Hey, you need to get Mark back to the States for exposure because he's got some real talent." And that's when my dad started to look for a new job, and we ended up moving back to Barron, Wisconsin, about 35 miles east of Balsam Lake. And so I finished my high school in Northwest Wisconsin, as you know, um, and I did 10th, 11th, and 12th grade there, and it was great. And I didn't really know how far my athletic career would take me. If we rewind to 1991, I was living in Saudi Arabia, and the Twins were in the World Series. And I woke up real early. I was a Twins fan growing up, and I watched that. And I remember the game 6 vividly when Kirby Puckett robbed the home run off the plexiglass and hit the walk-off home run. And I kind of had this dream ignited at that moment that this is kind of what I wanted to do one day. And I didn't tell a lot of people because it's kind of a lofty dream and goal to aspire that. But I went through my high school career and played sports and all that, and got an opportunity to go play Division I baseball at Illinois Chicago. So I went down there for 2 years before transferring to Florida State, and I did my junior year at Florida State. And, that was great experience as well. I got drafted by the Diamondbacks, and things just kept rolling along. So I played for 5 seasons with the Diamondbacks organization. And then I retired in 2012 and I became a teacher myself. And I coached high school baseball at River Falls High School while I got my undergrad degree, finished it. And I was just like at a crossroads. Do I want to teach? Do I want to coach? What I kind of want to do next? And I was looking for structure and stability in my life. So I ended up jumping into the education field. So I was a 12th grade health and PE teacher. And I actually went overseas as well. So I went to Saudi Arabia and started my international teaching career there. I moved to Dubai after 2 years and changed jobs. I was an eighth grade PE and health teacher, and then they kind of recruited me for an administrative role. So I was an administrator for the American School of Dubai at this time. In the summers, I was coaching in the Cape Cod Baseball League, and I still had one foot in baseball and one foot in education, and I was pretty much set. I finished my MBA, and I had this kind of this structured. I was pretty happy with my life. In 2018. the Giants called, the San Francisco Giants, and said, instead of going to the Cape Cod Baseball League for the summer, could you come work for us? And I said, sure. So I went to Salem, Oregon, and I was the fundamentals coach for the summer 2018. And I went back to Dubai, had a really good job there. And David Bell was actually like, hey, Mark, what do you think about managing in 2019 next summer? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but if you think it's a good idea, I would love the opportunity. So they set it all up, and in 2019, I managed the short season team in Salem. I go back to Dubai for the school year, and that's when they changed regimes for the Giants. Bruce Bochy moved on, and that's when I joined the major league team with the San Francisco Giants in 2020. So this is actually, it's hard to believe it's the start of my sixth season up here with the major league club, and I've had kind of a variety of roles. An assistant coach was my first title, then I was a third base coach for 2 years, and now I'm spending my second year as a first base coach. And every day I feel humble and grateful for that opportunity to do something I dreamt about doing when I was a little kid. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not sure if I missed anything, but
No, man, it's so good. There's so
that
much
was
there too, right, to unpack. I know that there's probably a lot of people that are listening that will have questions at some point. So if you do have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat, and then we'll get to it at the end. But um, I think what's interesting about this, Mark, is we talked about some different things too, right? So we had talked about just kind of your path and what you have going on, and the third base coach, first base coach. Obviously, those are like prominent roles at the big league level, right? Those are dream jobs for a lot of guys, right? They work 20, 25 years, some guys, to get into that role. So your trajectory was really interesting, right? Of how you got there. That's part of why I think you and I connect so well, is you're definitely an outside the box sort of thinker, and it's not like this direct linear path that everybody has to take. I just don't believe that that's what makes someone great at what they do at all. So I just want to talk to you about that though. So obviously the transition into Major League Baseball, it was quick for you, obviously, right? And a lot of guys literally are coaching like in the minor leagues for 15 years sometimes before they get even a sniff at a major league job. What was that transition like for you when you came up and trying to fit in and kind of understand the dynamic with all that? Because a major league clubhouse is very different. You really have to have a pulse on it, have to have a great feel for the guys around you, right? They're pros at this point, so they're big boys. There's egos involved. Like, what was that like for you, man, to step in without a ton of experience in a major league dugout?
that's a good question. The education background helped me a great deal. And I think that's the foundation of teaching, coaching, learning. So at the core of that is trust and genuine authenticity of who you are and serving the people that you work for. And that takes time sometimes. So I didn't treat it much differently than I did when I had a group of 12th grade students. I had to earn their trust through genuine, authentic behaviors, through care, and through service to them first. And once those players, students, people felt that, um, then they trusted me quicker to help them get to their next best level of learning, of growth, of performance, if you will. So that adjustment, I think it did take a lot of situational awareness. I think you need to be humble and aware of the environment and respectful of those who put in a lot of time. But I also had a lot of confidence knowing that I facilitated a lot of learning environments as a teacher and instructor for many, many, many
Yeah.
hours, as much as many coaches do all throughout their career. So I felt like I had confidence that I could build that trust with the people, and I was going to continue to learn in the industry.
That's awesome, man. And I want to just touch on this before we jump in, kind of getting to the more of the character, the prime of this conversation. Talk about the sacrifice, man. The sacrifice of what big league coaches and players go through. And I think some people would say like, well, it's like a dream job and all that, which it is for a lot of people, but there is so much sacrifice. And I think about you and I, Mark. the things that you sacrificed. I mean, you went to UIC, right? Then you transferred to Florida State. If I personally just think of myself, ages 18 to 22, now I ended up being diagnosed with cancer, so it's kind of irrelevant, but let's just take that out of it. I don't know if I was truly willing, like if me and you were matching up shortstops, because you played short, so did I. I honestly don't know if I personally was willing to sacrifice what you did. And I can honestly say that because I had a girlfriend at the time who was really serious, who's now my wife. I had a lot of other things in play, right? It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just, hey, like just go do this, you know? And so it's always an intriguing thing, especially when I think of you and I, because I really was not willing to do, if I really just asked myself honestly, I was not willing to do what you were, right? Now I loved it. I probably loved the sport as much as you did, but I was not willing to sacrifice to get to where you did. So can you just talk about that? Because I think people think of it as like easier than it is, right? Like I think they
Mm-hmm.
think of it like, yeah, I mean, if you're talented and you work hard and you get some breaks, like you get there. It's like, no, it's like many personal decisions where you're putting that before really anything else as you're striving for that goal. So can you just talk a little bit about that, man, for yourself, for like your own experience, what you give up, what you've given up, and then what the players around you, the other coaches, like there's such a there's such a dynamic in that that I think it can really grow a team together because you're all sacrificing a ton, right? So can you just touch on that, man, before we roll into the character side of it?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it's the time away from family and friends. So, as you're wrestling with, um, one of your passions and probably another passion or love of yours, which was family and friends, I had the same things going on inside of me when I was trying to pursue my dreams and goals. And I think the biggest sacrifice you have to make is time away from family and friends. The thing that helped me the most was those same people supported my aspirations and goals. And so from a young age, even in Islamabad, Pakistan, I had a lot of Pakistani friends who they're looking out for me. They saw something special in my athletic ability when they wanted to go to even in ninth grade, a party, let's say, they were like, you got this tomorrow. And if you, those are the things, the social norms that you're, exposed to in those age brackets where, the credibility of your friend groups and stuff, or your a girlfriend or a partner, um, you feel like you don't want to miss that. And so when those people supported my aspirations, my dreams, my goals, especially my family and friends, it just kind of put the wind at my back to continue to pursue my passion relentlessly. But now being in the big leagues still, uh, we're kind of in the entertainment industry, right? Our competitions are at night. Most people are watching us, right? Or going to the game. Or so, 4th of July's and holidays and all of these different events, um, I miss, right? So those are moments that you know you miss out on, but it still it still makes me feel humble that I have the opportunity to do what I do. And now it's just become like part of what I do. And the people around me still are supporting me to kind of give me the wind at my back, if you will, to keep pursuing this and in this career. And no, I know I'm very lucky to have this opportunity. And you don't know how long it's going to last. So I try to approach it with humility.
Yeah, it's really good, man. I appreciate your response on that because I think it is easy to see it. When you go to a game or something like that, you kind of see all of the fun pieces of it when you can go to 5 to 7 as games as a fan in the summer. And it's like, oh, that's awesome. Like that seems great, but it really is. There's way more to it in the time away and I mean, everything that you deal with personally. I mean, just think of the schedule, the flights, and the red eyes, and travel, and it's just a part of it. And I just really appreciate that, and I think it's obviously I always see the human element of it as from working in it, but I think it's really important for people to understand that too, coming from your end, that there's a lot of sacrifice involved, and as we kind of move to the conversation of character too, let's kind of just start with this, Mark. So in your mind, like we talk about character, obviously we want that to be important as a human being. I mean, that's really what it's built off, not just like a baseball player or basketball player, whatever, an athlete or whatever you're doing. But why does it matter? Like, why do you think character matters in what you do?
It's a good question. So I think there's probably people define character in a lot of different ways, but I think of it as the qualities and kind of makeup of who you are. And inevitably, you're going to have positive or negative experiences that come your way, right? In life and sport and job. And I think of those qualities and makeup. Some are more like, I don't know if you've seen those hamster cages that people get inside and they bump into each other, they're bubbles. I
Yeah.
think we all have a bubble, a sphere of activity
Yeah,
around us,
that's good, man.
right? And
Yeah.
inside of that is our character. And things come at us, and some of it gets into us. Words, thoughts, and action get to us and influence the way we think and act. And some of it bounces off. And I think your character allows you to have the humility when you have positive experiences to keep going and learn. And also, different ways. I don't know if you want to use the word strong character, but when you have negative experiences, you have the humility as well to learn, to grow, to be resilient, to come back for your next opportunity. And so I think that for those couple reasons, it keeps you grounded, it keeps you humble, and it probably keeps you unselfish in the sense that when you go into an environment, you're thinking about not only maximizing your individual performance, but those around you, because you have enough awareness about the environment and what that represents. So you think of people with strong character in the industry, and like one of the first guys that comes to mind is like Derek Jeter, right? And how consistent he was to lead the New York Yankees for 20 years in a high profile city at a championship level with all of the expectations and pressures and to perform really well and set a standard of excellence for that organization for a really, really long time. Um, I'm sure I would love to talk to him, but I'm sure he got challenged. I'm sure his character got challenged a lot in those 20 years,
Mhm.
right? And he had a strong background from Michigan with family that allowed him to be resilient during those times, those negative experiences. And also when he had positive experiences to remain humble enough to keep going, right? So, there's a lot of other players and people that I worked with in sport that have really strong character as well. But the consistency is something that stood out to me of somebody who has kind of strong character in sport or in even the professional industry, like in education that I worked with, right? And how they handled successful experiences, and more importantly, how they responded when negative experiences or things hit the fan.
It's so good, man. I think obviously, I think we can learn a lot in our hardest times, right? For what the most challenging pieces of it are. And for me, you bring up Derek Jeter, and one of the things that, um, what I often think about is this side interview that he did one time. It's like through the Yes Network. It wasn't a very big like promotional thing. I dug it up one day on the internet and just kind of found it, but it was on leadership, and Derek was talking about who he looks to for as like his mentor as a leader, basically. And they asked him to kind of summarize like the people he tries to emulate. And his response was so good, man. It was just like he basically said like, I don't know anything different than just being me,
Hmm.
right? But the way that he was brought up, right? Like his parents never allowed him to say I can't. And like he had that like foundation at home that was so strong, like you're talking about. And I honestly think that that's a big piece of it too, is like, who do we have around us that hold us accountable? Right.
Hmm.
I mean, and the people to me with that have high character too. And this is for parents listening, and will be listening in the future to the recorded version. But to me, it's like who you surround yourself with. I mean, you brought it up with your friends, right? I mean, trying to look out for you, take care of you, try to make sure you're not getting into trouble. I mean, you just really have to surround yourself with people that bring you up too,
Hmm.
and that hold that character with you, and just be really careful of that. But I love, everything that you were saying there, man. I just think it's absolutely critical, and I think as kids, it's there's so much coming at them now, youth, high school, college, that can really tear a character down, right? I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
one thing they do wrong that gets posted on social media can really live with them forever, right? They just have to be so careful. what they say, in a game, might get caught on tape now, where it's maybe just an off the cuff, like lost their temper a little bit. So I think it's just, they're under such a microscope now too, Mark. Everybody, like big leaguers, youth, high school, like there's just a bigger microscope now because things can travel quicker. Um,
Hmm.
so as we move to that though, like I want you to kind of talk about, you talk about Derek Jeter, but do you have some examples of guys that you've been around? I want people to be able to like kind of hear and understand like a major league clubhouse, because I've been around them as well. But I'd like you to talk about the guys that you've been around, man, that like kind of command a clubhouse and people really respect them and they follow them. And what makes them like that? What's, in your opinion, like what do big leaguers, what are they drawn to? What are coaches trying to get out of players to get them to lead and to kind of have that character that people follow?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the people that have stood out the most to me in my time in athletics have been, or if you call them leaders, and I think they are leaders, um, although they probably wouldn't want that recognition to their name, are even keeled, they're consistent, they're positive, they have empathy, they compassion, they're competitive, and they elevate those around them, right? And they make other people around them better. And so, you know, a couple guys that I play with, I think Buster Posey is one of them. He has natural leadership. I think Paul Goldschmidt, who's with the Yankees now, and both of those guys had a genuine authenticity about their connection to the environment. They'd walk into the space and nothing is forced. They're just like Jeter said, they're being them, right? Wilmer Flores is another guy who has earned the respect of almost every clubhouse I've ever been a part of because of who he is, not necessarily what he does, but who he is as a person and how he works and how he prepares to be a professional, how he supports with nonverbal and verbal feedback. Matt Chapman is also like this. Willie Adames has this joy and zest for the game. And all of these guys are elevating those around them. And I think within each of those cases or each of those people get challenged as well. Their character gets challenged as well. I mean, in our sport, there's a ton of adversity, and they do have strong character. I mean, Willie Adames, this last first month of the year, he hasn't performed at his best, and you wouldn't know it, right? He comes in every day. He's got joy. He's training. He's got purpose. He's positive. He's focusing on the next day. He's focusing on the next opportunity, and he's making his teammates better. And I think that's an example of somebody with strong character. And I'm sure the financial security of his contract helps. But from what I understand of Willie Adames in Milwaukee, and maybe you could tell me more, is he was like that everywhere he's been,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And we knew that when we were getting him. And that's one of the reasons we invested in the player so much,
Yep.
right? And so, I think most of the guys, and maybe um, there's a misconception of the leader has to be the loudest voice in the room, right? And the person who is talking the most is going to be the natural leader. And I think sometimes for me, in my experiences, it's almost been the exact opposite. It's been the person who's modeling the consistent behavior, authenticity, the preparation, the training. And at the right moment, they step up and say the right thing, but they're not the one that's always being the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah, it's so good, Mark. And it's such a unique sport too, right? I mean, it's very different than like a football where the environment
Hmm.
is a little bit more emotional. You might need to be vocal. You're trying to carry, maybe a practice that's outdoor and, and there's a lot going on. And, there's just so many different things with football and other sports, and anything that you're doing. The leadership just depends on kind of the situation. And you brought it up, man. And I think this is kind of hitting on it, but ultimately, like if I think it's really hard to hold a leadership position in Major League Baseball in a clubhouse if people don't view you as like a high character individual. I
Hmm.
think it's really difficult, man. Like based on my experience, there are some really talented players that maybe don't go about their business the right way, that they're a little bit selfish. It's not really about winning for them. Like those guys don't carry a clubhouse, and if you get too many of those guys, it can really hurt you. And
Mm,
I've said this for a long time, about Willie, for example. Just in my experience away, obviously I wasn't on the field like you. But people don't understand the value that an individual like that has, on a clubhouse, in a culture, right? And culture
mhm,
is so overused, Mark, but it's true. Like, like if you
mhm.
can get the right guys to build that culture, they know how to win. They want to win. They bring that energy every day. They bring other people up. Like if you get enough of those guys together, you guys are having a good year right now. Like it just clicks. And last, this is 2 weeks ago now, I was talking to another, a front office executive, for a team that was struggling, and he's a really good friend of mine. I won't get into the team and stuff, but he said we just brought in too many guys that they don't hold the character that we want, and we totally missed on that. And if you would
Mhm.
know the team, you'd be like, wow, these guys are so talented. But that's not the end all be all. There's so many pieces that go into a Major League Baseball clubhouse, right? So now let's translate that. So obviously going back, you have a lot of different experience, but let's look at like youth, high school baseball, college baseball. Even the people listening to this are going to be parents that are youth and high school. There will be some kids that probably listen with their parents, but what's your advice to younger kids on how to build that character, and then to parents on how they can help their kids build character so that they can be the ones that stand out in a really good way, be authentic, be comfortable in their own skin, and almost carry that into life?
It's a good question. So, actually, early in my teaching career, I kind of used that line. One of my primary purposes was to help build character through sport. And as I learned a little bit about coaching and people, I changed the language. My job wasn't to build character, it was help reveal character. And so, what does that mean? Our job is to help those young people, the most important people in the room, reveal their own best version of themselves, right? Not to tell them what to do or what, it's for them to learn, to grow, and to have the intrinsic motivation to make behavioral changes that are going to last a lifetime. And so I think when you ask that question, well, how can we help them the most? I think a lot of it is the environment, to your point. It's modeling consistent actions and words and thoughts and behaviors, um, for the environments that you create with genuine authenticity. And if people, players, if you're coaching them, if you're kids, if you have them, they watch a lot. Most of our communication is nonverbal. And so if you're consistent and authentic and you're positive and you're having these environments, I think over time, kids, students, players will watch, they'll learn, and they'll understand how to deal with those positive and negative experiences that get thrown at you in life, and how you respond to them, and how you deal with humility when you have a successful experience, or when you have a negative experience, how you take accountability and responsibility for that to learn and grow and not blame others, to pick your teammates up, and these types of things, and how you're at an airport counter and you don't get the break that you want, or they move your seat, and how you respond to adversity when somebody, these little bumps in the road that kind of are annoying to you, or you're in the fast lane and this person cuts you off, and how do you handle that, right? All these stressors that we have. But I think the more you can be genuine and authentic with your reactions, your responses to these types of things, um, it'll create those environments that will help reveal that character within each person.
Yeah, Mark. And when in speaking of that, so like thinking about your own experience, what are some things that you dealt with that were really tough at the time, but really you can look back and say, and that really, really impacted me and built me to be, it built my character, and it built me to be stronger mentally. Like you've dealt with some things in your career too. So can you share some of that, and what those did to you and how those impacted you?
Yeah, I think injuries is one of them, right? I mean, I had a pretty good thumb injury, um, my in high A, the first like serious 6 week break that I've ever had. And when I came back from that, I didn't feel like I could perform at the same level. And it took me a long time to get back on that. Another time was the first time that you were told, like, no, you're not good enough, right? How did that psychologically impact the way you thought? And I remember it vividly. I remember this was in the Hawaii Winter League. Um, I went out there. I had always been a starter on the team, and I went to the lineup and I didn't start that day. It was somebody else, and oh, okay. It was just I was a little bit soured by it, to be honest. And I was like, I want to play, right? But I went in late and got a hit. The next day, come to the field, and I wasn't in there again, right? And I was like, man. And it almost felt like somebody was trying to take my dream away from me, even though they weren't. I was like, I want to get to the big leagues. And this person, whoever's making the lineup, isn't putting my name there. So that's getting in the way of my dream
Yeah.
and my
Yeah.
aspiration.
Right.
And I got about a week into that season with the Winter League, and I started maybe one game. And I kind of changed my perspective on how I approached each day. I shifted my focus. I was in Hawaii. I was grateful for the Diamondbacks to put me up in an apartment. There's beautiful weather. There's great people from all around. And I said, like, well, how can I learn and grow and make, this 2 or 3 hours part of my day, not all of who I am. And I stepped back a little bit and I started to play. The other person got hurt. And with this new perspective on the season, I ended up performing at my best, right? I had one of the best 2 months of playing I ended up winning the MVP of the league by shifting my perspective a little bit. Getting told no to the first Division I college program, right? Hey, you're not big enough, you're not strong enough, you're not physical, you're not a D1 physical body, right? You're not and then you have to take that in, right? I can listen to these people, or I can find a different pathway within reason that's realistic within the scope of what you can do. So all of these things have challenged you. I mean, I think then you get off the field and you have friends and you have adversities in life. And I was fortunate enough to grow up around the world, so I was able to see a lot of different things in a short period of time and different cultures and people and how they lived and what they had. And um, that allowed me, I think, to have a little bit wider lens on how to deal with some things when they came my way. And I'm forever grateful for those experiences as well. So, I mean, I think those are a couple of things that challenged me throughout, my athletic career. And then even as you get into the professional career, right? You go for your first job and you apply for it and you don't get it, right? How do you respond to that? Do you reflect and take accountability and learn and grow, or do you kind of be like, they messed up and they missed the boat and you don't make adjustments, or um, you just don't reflect on that. So I think all of that has influenced, and I'm still learning to this day. I think that's the coolest part about life is the wisdom that you learn as you continue to grow as a person.
Yeah, I love that too, Mark. And I think it's when you talk about just the different experiences that everybody faces. I think it's interesting how you brought up, the individual like not, basically you first viewed it as like they're standing in your way, right? Like I think there's a natural mechanism for kids to kind of like quickly point,
Hmm.
right? Like instead of reflecting on what they can do different or what they can do better. And I honestly think parents do that too, right? That's our tendency. My kids are little, so it's I'm probably not quite there for some of the stuff that the feedback that they get, the constructive criticism that they get. I probably haven't faced a lot of that yet, but hopefully through the years of learning, I've been able to kind of figure out, instead of teaching them like a quick reaction and blame somebody, as you were talking about in that situation, it's, what are they saying? Is there any truth to it? And I
Hmm.
think it's really important to think about that, but then use it as motivation as well, right? And that's one of the things you hit on. And I think if you can really do that well, it does build your character because you become extremely resilient, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you constantly change things and change perspective to, a little bit more of a positive, grateful outlook. I mean, there's research on this, right? That those people are typically happier, the people that can find gratitude in any situation, and like you did in Hawaii, man, and just kind of spin it to turn it around. And sometimes just thinking that that's what's best for you too, like that manager probably, had a plan for you and maybe just held a little bit of that. Maybe it was to motivate you a little bit or to give you a little bit of push back, to challenge you a little bit. I mean, you never know why they're doing it. And a lot of kids, whether it's youth, high school, face different challenges with coaches, right?
Mhm.
Different opinion on their ability. I mean, I've worked with kids from a client perspective that can literally pick their college that they want to go to,
Mhm.
but their high school coach thinks they're extremely overrated, and
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
have to kind of deal with that while they're in their process of like, my own high school coach doesn't even think I'm this good. Like, how do I get them to believe in me? And kind of just, there's so many different pieces to this, but I love what you were saying, man, just kind of changing it and changing that perspective to kind of really focus on really, if you can jog out on a baseball field, just start there. You can jog on a baseball field. Like that's your
Mhm.
like the first thing you should be grateful for. Like you can walk, you can jog, you can run. Like, I mean, there's just, if you start really breaking it down and giving good perspective on it, there's so many things. And so what I want to get across to parents in this too, I mean, you're trying to build good character, but a lot of that character, what Mark is just bringing up, is just perspective and really, really getting them to really to hold gratitude towards many different things that they do. Right. So I appreciate that perspective, Mark. What I'm going to go back to this for you. And if anyone's, yeah, there's some question and answer, um, that we'll get to as well, Mark. I think those are some really good questions. So if you do have questions, feel free to throw them in there, in the Q&A at the bottom. But I'm going to finish up with a couple of things and we'll get to those. So in your mind though, as you kind of like look at kids with a big dream, right? You were there once, I was there once. What's your advice in general to parents, man, on how to handle their kids, how to support their kids, you know, what they can do to help do anything that they can do within reason, right, to help them chase that dream. What's your advice to parents, man?
Yeah, and I don't know there's probably no exact right answer. This is just my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yep.
I think the purpose is to ignite a passion that's perhaps going to last a lifetime. What it doesn't look like is pushing somebody so hard, so far to the point that they don't like that passion anymore. And we know there's a lot of cases of people, guardians, supporters, pushing their young people so hard that they end up losing that passion, right? Now, I do think there's a balance to that. I do think that, the brain isn't fully developed until age 25 or something like that. And the social pressures and norms of growing up, there's other priorities at that time in what's popular. So where people want to put their effort, sometimes the parent might know or the supporter might know, like, you have a special talent and you might need to put a little bit more of your time and effort into your craft, your passion, and the friends and the environment or those things will be there later. The player, the kid doesn't always understand that. So I would say that if you can build a healthy relationship with your people and understand what they want, I think you'll probably have healthier conversations than I don't know if the right word is like a dictatorship, but of just always telling them, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, you need to do that. I think that could potentially be a recipe for pushback, resentment, not falling in love with a passion of theirs. Now, if there's family values of expectations of like controllable characteristics related to any performance that they put their time, energy, and effort into, like attitude, I expect that you have a good attitude. I expect that you try your best, right? Effort, right? Those things maybe are uncompromisable principles in any aspect of what they choose to do if they want to do fun things in life, right? Um, so those values or those principles of that household might stay intact, and those you don't give on those. But you might have to make a little bit of a negotiation, if you will, on some other things about the passions and of what kids want to do. So I don't know if that's a long-winded answer of what's the best advice you can give parents, but I think it's at the crux of building trust, of listening to them clearly, so that you can you want to listen so well to them and hear and understand what they're saying, so that when you talk to them, they understand what you're saying. And I think sometimes that part is missed a little bit. I think that part, the parents don't, or the guardians or the adults don't always listen well enough first to make their points, relevant points. They don't have the patience, we don't have the patience.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I think that's kind of my long-winded answer. And I think it's hard, to your point about the instantaneous environments that people are growing up in social media, right? I mean, if they don't like the app they're on, they usually go to the next one, right? And if they don't like the TV channel they're on, they go to the next one. If they don't like the show they're on, they just go to the next streaming. So everything is instantaneous. So the problem solving and resiliency to do fun things or enjoyable things, is at their fingertips, literally.
Yep.
And so the critical thinking, the problem solving, the dealing with adversity, sitting through something that they don't want to sit through.
Yep.
These are all like things that a lot of young people don't have to deal with today. So when they get a big bump in the road, it's a little bit foreign to them. Like, how do I deal with it? Because usually everything goes a lot smoother than this.
No, man, I love the answer there though, because I think you're ultimately, you're saying in some ways like empowering them, listening to them,
Yeah.
understanding them, right? Of what is driving them. I mean, earlier in the conversation, you talked about intrinsic motivation, which I'm really big on in the draft. That's like all I looked for was like who's driven with intrinsic motivation, right? Versus extrinsic. So so you and I hit on, you hit on that, and it's something I'm a big believer in. But essentially, you're trying to figure out what motivates your kids, and obviously, there's a passion that you're talking about of like that can change their life, right? And that's why like baseball is a sport, but it's so much more than a sport if it's a passion that you learn from. I mean, you have a
Hmm.
career in it, I have a career in it, right? Like there's things that you can do with it, whether it's play or work in it, whatever. But I do like that, man. I think it's important to kind of listen, like you were saying, and hear them out, understand them. I think those are all really really important things. I really appreciate that insight. So much good stuff here, Mark. I appreciate obviously you as a friend and all that. I want to get to some of the questions here. Steve asked some good questions here. Let me just get it pulled up. But I really like this. So, what character traits do you find that are most common amongst the successful players you coach? That's a good question.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. The term grit, I think, is thrown around loosely, but people who have passion, they remain passionate, they persevere. Um, Most of the highly successful people do those things. They have passion, they persevere through adversity for their next opportunity. Most of the high talented, high character people are competitive within the values that are uncompromisable to them. And most of that is like effort, playing the game with respect or earning the respect of their teammates, right? Or their community. In high school, a lot of times, like you get to a level within a healthy team, and those high school players have so much pride in that group of people that are representing that community. And I think that's what sport is. I mean, I think sport is serves as a purpose to represent a community of people, to bring communities together, to celebrate those individuals, right? In that time, regardless of their backgrounds, right? And that's the coolest part about and I think Nelson Mandela tried to do this with South Africa, right? And the apartheid and bringing rugby, the World Cup of rugby, bringing diversity into South Africa to promote unity, tolerance, acceptance. So when we join a team, it's about a team and accepting somebody else's background and learning from their background, and then going out on that competition court and playing for the name on the front, so to speak. And I also think you're playing for the name on your back with respect to your family values within the scope of that community, that team. Um, so I think those are some of the common characteristics of high character players that I've been around in college and professional ranks.
I really like that, Mark. That was great, man. Another good question here. If anyone else has any questions, just throw them in the Q&A. We'll finish up here with the rest of these. So, as a coach, how do you handle a player who is a grown man when they don't demonstrate the character traits that you expect of a professional? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think communicating the expectations ahead of time is the first thing. And um, you build that through trust. So, you have a player and say, hey, um, when you perform at your best, it looks like what, right? And it could be as simple as something like you think good things are going to happen, you're positive, you're optimistic, and you're aggressive, you're confident, you know. And when you're not going well, it's as simple as bad body language, you're negative. You feel like the world's up against you, the calls are up against you, you don't have your best day. So you're negative and you're passive, you're tentative, right? So let's talk about when you're in your peak level of performance and it looks like this, you're positive and aggressive. And when I see you fall out of that and you're negative and passive, I'm going to nudge you, if you're okay with it, to get you back into that space. And part of that nudge and accountability and conversation, you might not like, and this is in a peaceful state of mind. This is not right after an emotional at bat or a negative experience. This is in a peaceful time when rational thinking's happening. And they're like, yeah, actually, that's what I want because I want to be at my best on a more consistent basis. And I'd agree with him or this person that this is when I'm at my best to help our team. So communicating the expectations ahead of time makes it a lot easier on the back end to drop the hammer on where you can feel you can optimize performance, right? Individual performance and team performance. If you do it the other way and it's unexpected, right? And uncommunicated, that's when the resentment, that's when people feel like, man, he didn't do it for him, but he did it for her, or the inconsistency in the feedback, like it's a moving target. What is the target? Where are the expectations? Yeah. Right? Well, and so I think it's really critical to communicate those expectations ahead of time. At our level, it's important to work with those players to establish where they're at their best, and then to try to hold them accountable once trust is built within those players. I certainly don't want to go up to somebody and try to hold them accountable for performance if I haven't communicated with them and built that relationship.
Yep, makes sense, man. So yeah, that's really interesting because essentially what you're saying is you're the way that you do that is through energy and time ahead of the situation a lot of times,
For
right?
sure.
And you're working for months and months and months to build a relationship to where that trust is there for you to do that. And I think, what the question, I think if you go back to that, the grown man thing, I mean, that's where it's got to be coming from someone that you really trust. If you're in that position, if you're in a Major League Baseball dugout, it has to be people that you want to push you at the right time. They know, and you obviously know this too, Mark, way better than I do being in a dugout, but there's a time and a place is really kind of what you're saying too, right? I mean, there's situations where you're going to pick and choose. I don't think you're going to pour it on to somebody in a certain situation. You're like, oh man, this is not the time, to dive into this. But yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
I'll share one story. So a couple of years ago, I was in charge of the running game, right? So pickoffs, when we pick off to the bases and not, right? And we have a lot of information. We do our scouting, we do our homework ahead of time before each series to try to get outs and mitigate run scoring opportunities. So we try to slow them down, run prevention. So we do our homework, we get in the competition. There's a player who likes to steal bases. I call a pick over, try to pick this guy off. And the pitcher shakes like this. And the catcher
Great.
just completely against the coaches, whoever's calling it. In this case, it was me. And the catcher put down the sign again, and the pitcher went like this again.
That's good,
And
man.
he threw his pitch, and the run did not score. The guy did steal the base, and then he got to the next one, but he didn't score. And he came in the dugout emotional, and he said, "Mark, I'm not," and he was hot. "I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that." Right. And I had a choice to make in that moment, right? Like I'm trying to hold this person accountable, but I also want him to continue to perform at his best and do his job, right? And his job is to stop runs. just like that was my attempt to do my job and help him in that moment. But he was emotional, so I think timing is really critical on accountability. And I didn't feel like it was the right time while he's in the middle of competition to get into maybe a heated conversation. So I told the person, I said, "Hey, look at me," because he wasn't looking, and I was said it calmly. I said, "Look at me. You're doing your job. You're stopping runs. Let's talk about this later. Keep doing your job." Right? And I gave him a pat, and he continued and had a great game. The next day, I went to him. I said, "Hey," and "Oh, I'm so sorry. I that accountability from his end. I just need to listen to the team, to the strategy." And I said, "Time out. Let's talk about this. Help me understand where you're at and what I can do to help you better." And we talked at this time, and we moved the needle. And the next time, I said, "Well, here's what goes into it. Here's what we do." I gave him context and da 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 da. I said, well, the next time you do it, just do it. Okay. We call a move the next time, and he gets the guy out, right? He picks the guy off.
That's great.
And he comes in fired up and really excited. But that's a small story of maybe how you would hold somebody
Yeah.
accountable at this level and having the poise. And I think there's probably uncompromisable values that you don't want to give into at that time, but you also have the humility to say, okay, who's the most important person in this conversation? Is it the player? He's doing really well. He doesn't feel comfortable with this strategy. We got to get him there at a future time. Right now, he's in the flow state and he's emotional, so he's not going to listen.
Oh, that's such a great story, man. Sweet justice when you ended up getting him out.
I'm glad we got him.
That's awesome, man. One more question here. If anyone else has any questions, throw them up in here. What can you do to develop? What can a young player do to develop these critical character traits? Which is something we touched on a little bit, but how going back to this, Mark, how can a parent best support their young player in this development? So, just retouching on maybe this question, some final thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, once I kind of hit on like the uncompromisable family values and principles that your family stands for, right? And I think there should be controllable characteristics towards high performance, and those are based on like your effort, your attitude, finding joy, maybe body language. Uh, you know, not necessarily if the result was a made three-pointer or a home run or result, but based on the effort and the preparation and stuff like that. So once those are established and communicated, and I also think those should be um, like I did with the player. Hey, when you're at your best, what are like three things you do really well, right? I think positively. I think confidently. I think this. Okay, well, when you're not in this state, we need to get you there, right? To perform at your best. So after the game, maybe it's not right after the game because I think that's a common mistake. Hey, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you? It's just too hot. The conversation is too hot. So maybe let it sit for a little bit and negotiate that. You can't just let it slide, but maybe at a later time you come back towards those uncompromisable values or principles that you feel like you're going to get that person to their next best level and to learn and to be accountable. Or there's a negative experience of body language or teamwork, or they didn't give their best effort, or they had a bad attitude, or they things that maybe you didn't like as a parent, and that hindered their development as a person and as a player, and you just want to talk to them right away after the game. I think maybe it's best you wait, and let it sit and then have the conversation later and listen to them. What do you think about this experience? Hey, help me understand. If you have video of it, it's even better. Help me understand what happened here, right? And let them talk through it. And it sounds like this, and this, and this. And then, well, is this how you would handle the next time? Would you do the exact same thing? And help me understand why. Oh, well, you talked to me that when you're at your best, you do these things, right? And what you just did there was not being at your best. So how can we get you in that space more often, right? So I think those are that's what I would be focusing on. And I think those values and principles that you set, I don't think they should be a lot, but I think they should be clear. And I think they should be communicated within like your family boundaries.
It's so good, man. So good. And I think, a lot of people listening to this too also coach their kids, right? I mean, you have a lot of youth parents on here that might coach, and I want to share one quick story on this, Mark, because it's kind of reminding me of what you're saying. But so when I grew up, my dad coached me until I was probably 15 years old, till I got to high school, 16 years old, um, when I changed over into high school. So, but when I was 13 years old, I had hit in the three spot my whole life. Like that was kind of where I hit. And when I was 13, I went to maybe like our third, fourth game of the year, and I was hitting like sixth. So I go to look at the lineup and I'm hitting sixth. And I wasn't scuffling or anything like that, right? So I was immediately just hot. Like I was so mad. I was so mad at my dad, right? So the whole game, right? Like I'm just like just so upset because I was uber competitive and we were playing a good team. And we get in the car in his truck. We're going home, and I'm like not talking to him. Like I am not talking to him. And he doesn't say a whole lot, and he knew what he was doing. And I didn't, I understand it now, but he didn't say a whole lot. And then I finally just said, "What was that about, Dad? Like what are you doing? Like what are we doing? Like why did you do that?" And his point back to me was, "Is this about you or is this about the team? Right? Is everything about you or is it about the team?"
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that at the time it probably hurt the team a little bit to make that message, but I was getting a little too selfish and it was becoming too much about me. And so it was his
Mm-hmm.
way to say, like, this isn't about you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is about a team. So if you're upset about this because you think it hurt the team, that's one thing. But that's the question. Is this about you or is this about the team?
Mm-hmm.
And it really made me think, man. At 13 years old, it was like, yeah, is this like an ego thing that I'm like the three hitter and I'm getting bumped down? Or is this because I'm competitive and I want to help the team, so I want to be up in the order? But the point is that as a parent, a coach, whatever influence you have, sometimes there are some tough points you have to make,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have to make those points when the timing is right. And I think like as a parent, it's really tough sometimes to like battle through that and like know that it's like, man, this is going to be painful, but I have to have this conversation or I have to create this action to make sure that the lesson is there moving forward. Because I never
Mm-hmm.
forgot that. Right. And so I think in the moment, it's easy to kind of always try to cover it. It's like, man, this is going to be a tough 24 to 48 hours. Like, I don't want to do this the next couple of days. Like, I just have to make this decision. We'll kind of cover it up, band-aid it up, and try to go to the next game and see if it gets better or whatever's happening. But my point in all that, Mark, is going back to kind of the really some of the questions here. But it's ultimately like as you're trying to build character, there are just some really tough things that you might have to do as a parent to teach a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's so many different stories that you probably have too, where you just remember it and it's like it really impacted you, but it was tough in that moment and probably tough for your parents or really a tough conversation. But I'm a big fan of hitting stuff head on, in
Yeah.
the right time, the right moment. Obviously, as a big league coach, it's a lot different than parenting a 10-year-old that you're coaching. Like it's not, the magnitude isn't as big of a deal. You're not dealing with, adult professionals at that point. You're still parenting. So my point in all that is really just as my advice in some of it too, and kind of saying what on top of some of the things that you said, I think we just have to be willing to hit stuff head on as
For sure.
parents, and if you see some things that your kids are doing, if you see some actions that, really start kind of like, ah, man, that's not really the character that I'm trying to build here in this kid, in my kid. So it's our job, as parents, it's our job to help build that character, right? Whether it's a coach or a parent, or like you said, a guardian or influence in a kid's life, it's our job to help them build that. So that's my dad's story for the day, but still remember it, man. Still remember,
That's
so
that
mad.
that's a good one.
So
I
mad.
like that one. It reminded me of when I was teaching 12th grade health, and my rule was that I wasn't going to stop instruction to cover a past lesson. It was their responsibility to come find me before or after class to get caught up. Because I didn't think it was fair to the other 20 people in class to just stop in the middle for one person for the team, right? And this smart 12th grader was insistent. about the last lesson. What do we cover? What do we cover? And it pushed my frustration tolerance to the limit. And I basically was like, time out, you know, and I humiliated the person, and I probably shouldn't, but it was like the lesson. I tried to give him like 3 strikes, like, hey, let's talk about this after class. And he stayed on it. Well, I don't understand. I think it's a better idea to talk about this after class. And then he stayed on it. And I said, okay, time out. So I think what I'm understanding here is you want me to stop instruction for you. This is all about you. And this environment's all, and I just stayed on this you. And, you know, he kind of sunk down in his chair. And I thought, man, did I come down too hard on this guy? And
So good.
After class, I had a conversation with him, and we caught up about the material. And 2 months later, this guy is a valedictorian of our class, and he's up on stage giving his speech. And he references that moment when he was humbled in 12th grade health
No
class,
way,
and
man.
how that influenced the way he's going to think about not only the environment that he's in, but the future environments that he wants to use his knowledge and his talent and his skills to make others around him better. And it wasn't until that moment that he didn't feel like it was always all about him.
Hmm.
And that's how his environments were trained. So I was like, whoa, I guess maybe being firm and being accountable with them was a good thing. But I also think that he knew that I cared about him too,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
before I did that. And I think that's a really big piece of
I love that story, Mark. That's great, dude. I think
it.
there's so many funny stories we could probably share. We could talk for a few hours on this, but I just really appreciate your time, man. I love that story, and it's a good one to finish on. But I know you have a big series coming up this weekend, man, and hopefully you guys keep it rolling, buddy. And we'll stay in touch, man. I'll talk with you soon. But thanks a lot for coming on, bud, and we'll stay in
Thanks for
touch.
having me on. Appreciate it.
You bet,
We'll be in
buddy. We'll
touch.
talk to you
Take
soon.
care. Bye bye.